just my bonnet. No, it's not a test, only the best.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to speak the Queen's English like an aristocrat, open your throat, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Not like what this fella does. All this is really is an alternative route to the Alps. To or from the Alps is slightly irrelevant. Probably without tolls and fees setting, you tend to get pushed towards Holland, Luxembourg, Germany. Not as far as Germany, because then you're going to end up going through Switzerland to get to Geneva and the Alps, French Alps. It's only a few minutes here or there, and it's the speed of the autobahns that do it. Whether you can go 130 or 110 kilometres an hour, but if you're not going to do that, you're not taking advantage of it. Take a more direct, more fuel-efficient route. But this, what is an attractive stop-offs, take it all in suggestion for you. I'm just expanding with memories and recollections of observations past. Germany seems for me to always promote memories of TEFL teaching business English. To speak posh English, like the Queen, a number of people particularly spoke like between the wars and before. You need particular olfactory manipulations. Your olfactory area, you need to open up your throat, basically. Any of these mouth movements feel particularly unnatural. You've been learning them since you were a child. And it can be a particularly intimate relationship between student and teacher when you're teaching the finer points of productive spoken language. You'll need to record yourself and listen back ad infinitum to refine this just for yourself before you start teaching. But my experience was in northern Italy, in Milan. A divorced housewife looking to remarry for money the second time round. She wanted to talk posher, to bag better. The director of the school was heavily pushing the young graduate teacher towards the middle-aged divorcee. These olfactory manipulations can be a slow progress, and she was concerned about the cost that this might entail, and he was suggesting the bargain that with a little bit of it wouldn't be so bad to befriend the teacher, and the teacher, he gets free rent, I think, a place to live so that you can afford to main and pick up other occasional random classes for the director. The toy boy language teacher taken in to learn. Not really an April to December relationship, but compromising a princess's ideal, I think. To a certain extent, the further you venture, the more you can charge in fees in hourly rate. Austria, Vienna seemed a reasonable compromise. Not often diagonal through Belgium, Germany, into Austria. Salzburg on the way back was very nice. I did sample lessons in all the Ruhr towns on the way back as well. Along the Rhine, there are some very nice German towns. The last days of the internet cafe, just as the magic's fading, the children tell the parents that they're off to do some homework on the internet, and they sit there on each other's laps in the internet cafe watching pornography with the proprietor there really not knowing what to do and shrugging that his days are bound to be numbered, but you might as well reap it while you can. Oh, little cubicles were packed. It's my memory of Karlsruhe, I think it was called. I had a lucky 13 hours to Vienna in a little car with vegetable oil 50% mixed with the diesel at a time when this was worthwhile. Sat in the slipstream of a big bus for miles and kilometres and miles. Couldn't see a thing other than the back of the bus, and judging it keeps you alert. A kiddie at school used to do this with his bicycle. He had his racing bicycle. He used to almost glue his front wheel to the back of the school bus, and he'd get back 5 miles to home as quick as the bus would, just by using the slipstream. This is all dependent on the quality of the bus driver, really. Did know he was there. And the cyclist has had an accident. My return from Vienna was sooner than I'd expected. I like to include food and recipe suggestions there for you. It's important to me. Frozen rice dish out the freezer. When I was on the ferry to Calais, it was still rock solid. I couldn't eat it. I didn't eat it for much of the way. Close to Vienna, I did tuck in. It was past its best. It had defrosted. It was hot summer weather. And this little tip, rice can be nasty if it's not fresh. It can give you microbes that can give you explosive diarrhea. It was obvious that it wasn't good when I was eating it, but it was what I had. And I was hungry after 13 hours. I had the appointment in the morning, the training, recruitment, come elimination process. It was the first time. Time that I'd been in a room with so many experienced TEFL teachers from America and Canada. A lot of them, their grandfather had come from Vienna or something like that. So incredibly cutthroat and nasty. These were experienced people, much more knowledgeable about the industry than I. So nasty and bitchy to each other, and all in the same room, to each other's faces, knowing exactly that that's how it needs to go, reporting back from the client, not in their own words probably, what they have said about the other teacher or not. But then it goes the same like when they're grading the student. When they're grading them, you need so much more work. That's what keeps them in business. The student doesn't really know the tiny little things they're picking on, how tiny and little some of them are. The directors of the school, they're sort of trying lots of different therapists for their different clients, looking for a miracle. But all the therapists are completely cutthroat, ruthless nutcases. They're like sad gamblers seeking out a lucky rabbit's foot. my manger off rice problem that I only created myself. My solution was to put a wad of rolled up toilet paper into my pants to absorb things from my growling stomach as it more or less dribbled out involuntarily from my lower end. A little bit like having a period moment. I'm in the middle of this interview lecture that's dragging on and on with all these experienced, jaundiced teachers trying to upstage each other, intimidate each other, with no real creativity, just formula or rapport in the room at all. It was a horrible room to be in. It would be nicer to be in my own pants. But I didn't have any panty liners. I did have to get up to check things when I thought things were going to get particularly explosive. The very pretty on-site recent graduate that lived in an apartment with her former client just off Vienna's main square picked up my diarrhea-soaked wad that I'd lost on the way to the toilet from my seat in the classroom. I'd driven for the best part of a day. I couldn't not attend class, could I? The interview. She was so nice, she completely understanding. She'd had the same thing, and she might have been talking about period issues. She did find me sample lessons when the main instructor was making an example of me. And yes, while I was almost too embarrassed to show my face, it was worth it to see hers again. Everybody else in the room was so self-absorbed that they wouldn't have noticed a thing. The instructor, flown in from South Korea, very possessive, obsessive partner that he'd married, but on the phone to him all through the lesson, and he had to take the calls. It was an example of what not to do. Teaching English as a foreign language, you're teaching the competition how to replace you, a bit like America worries about what they've done with their products in China. Perhaps that's a reason for Brexit. Essentially giving away spies, but the whole idea is trade with the country, the basics. But if you're post-Brexit, this is paid rent for several months, got residency permit, huge investment for very little chance of repaying your reward, you might choose to teach English as a foreign language. Or the online option, and see if anything comes from that. Rate your profile, advertise pay Google to employ someone when you haven't necessarily got the prospect of any income from it yourself. That's what Google advertising is.
Throw me a kiss,
TEFL, teaching English as a foreign language, for so many years, the gold standard was the lingua franca, comparison translation between French and English from one dominant language to the next. There's a whole trope of false friends, they get called, between English and French. Not so many for other languages, but it still gets repeated as beware of false friends when you're learning to teach English as a foreign language. These false friends are similarities between words in the two different languages. Transient in meaning, often ending up as opposites. There's been a lot of wars between the two countries. 100 years worth at one point in time. TEFL has become hugely more difficult since Brexit. Let's take it as read that no one in France, hardly anyone in France particularly, is interested in learning English, but other countries in Europe they are. After the global financial crisis, it seemed particularly, or even only, option to teach business English in Germany. Corporate would pay for it. There are huge But my real revulsion about Vienna isn't anything to do with their almost immediate explosive diarrhoea, or even what was reported at the time as an endemic problem in Austria of people being kept in basements and Scandinois type scenarios, not too much of it. It was the right off the King's Square near the train station. There was the most miserable looking Asian women, Eastern women, Chinese, Thai, Philippine, dressed up in a caricature of what's supposed to be raunch type fishnets, just waiting in one window, half a dozen together. First thing in the morning, an industrial type red light district just off the main tourist attraction. I don't want to go anywhere near it, don't want to have anything to do with it, don't want to know that it exists. But there's a lot of this in Germany. I don't know if they're all as miserable. It's like a perversion of the nudist movement. FKK is often called. Flanders, Eurometropolis, Lille, bit of France, bit of Belgium, Ghent, Bruges and Arras you could include in the greater Eurometropolis. You can compare it to Manchester a little bit, because it's been run down and then rejuvenated.
Люблю свою жену, люблю свою собаку. Я всего на свете член, почти что супермен, но редко лезу в драку. Знает весь двор мой приговор, слуга народа. У меня почти все есть, достоинство и честь, и даже крики «Браво!». Персональный самолет мне выделил народ, а что, имею право на животу, вот тут набью тату, слуга народа.
Flanders is part of Belgium, the lower half is Wallonia. The French-speaking Walloons are closest to Lille, obviously. Dutch-speaking Flanders has Ghent, Bruges, Antwerp. And then there's the city-state of Bruxelles, je t'aime, Bruxelles, je t'aime, oh. In the middle, this is Belgium. Lille isn't part of Belgium, it's part of France. Feudal times divided enclaves up between the two in two different territories, and they have been part of Netherlands and part of France entirely at different times.
Belgium has a lot, and I repeat, a lot of weird territorial claims and boundaries. For one, there are technically 5 German exclaves hidden right along the border of the Liège province in East Belgium. However, these exclaves are only separated from mainland Germany from a Belgian train track, the Vennbahn, which is no longer in use. This means that you can be in Germany and only have 10 meters between you and Belgium between you go back into Germany. The smallest of these German exclaves is just a small house near the German town of Kosen with a front yard less than 2 hectares in area. Then you reach the ever so confusing town of Barelnassa and Barelhertog, in which there are 22 Belgian enclaves in the Netherlands and 8 Dutch enclaves in Belgium, 7 of which are counter enclaves, or a part of the Netherlands in Belgium in the Netherlands. These borders at first make no sense. Apparently they cross awkwardly through streets, buildings, restaurants, stores, and even houses. A person can literally wake up in one country and shower in the other. The rule is, whatever side your front door is on is the country that you pay your taxes to. The reason why it's so confusing is because, long story short, there was a guy ruling the area called Henry I, Duke of Brabant, who gave parcels of land to Godfrey II of Schoten, who ruled the area to the east, in an attempt to build an alliance so that his enemy Dirk VII wouldn't expand his influence. Long story short, Henry's land became Belgium, and Godfrey's land became the Netherlands. To this day, the two countries have stayed true to Godfrey and Henry's agreements and have split the land exactly how they did. But wait, we're not done just yet! Finally, you have the confusing Lys-Rivière-Canalari River in the border between the Walloon province of Hainaut and France. Starting in the town of Halleux in France, this river zigzags for about 26 kilometers with multiple river islets and land pieces that act as penne enclaves until it all stops in the town of Armentières. Each side has an equal 7 enclaves each along the river. Okay, now
shining star is the hope every wise man from on this fallen day.
Micro-enclaves we might go into later. It's a bit like the 3-field system. You get a field in a different area just so you've got your equal share of the quality. Subdividing different burgages now means that individual houses and even rooms next door to each other might be in different enclaves and so different regions. Not really very close to a border even. But thankfully the peace of Europe has enabled these to be largely as important as a county. Some hangovers of feudal times, broadly solved for centuries, really make a bit of a nonsense of the Northern Ireland Brexit belittling of customs law that Europe but for now, without the scanning technology that Antwerp is and 10% waste. Antwerp, a junior port to Rotterdam. Driven sailing closer to the wind. Dutch-speaking provincial states. Quand je veux rentrer chez moi, quand le ciel gris et la pluie me manquent, je vais mieux quand je te vois. Les villes sont belles, mais moi je ne pense qu'à toi. Quand mon pays et ma vie me manquent, moi je ne t'oublie pas. On n'a pas la plus longue de toutes les histoires. On n'a pas toujours gagné. Et d'habitude, j'ai l'attitude, même si c'est dur, de garder l'espoir. Quand on n'est pas les premiers, les paroles flagées, Saint-Gilles, la gueule. À qui je dois mon nom? Bruxelles, je t'aime. Tu m'avais manqué. Bruxelles, je t'aime. Bruxelles, je t'aime. Tu m'as préféré. Bruxelles, je t'aime. Bruxelles, je t'aime. Tu m'avais manqué. T'es la plus belle. Dutch invention of watches gave them advantage in long-distance navigating, calculating latitude and longitude. Maritime ships now are registered wherever offers the cheapest tax. Britain caused trouble by making only British goods allowed to travel in British ships, led to a war between the Dutch provincial states and Britain. Just 20,000 soldiers installed a Orange Queen in Britain. The Dutch provincial states before that had been Iberian, Portuguese, Spanish. The best of, because it had such luxury manufacturing and good education. Squabbled over by France, Germany, and Britain was a friend and an enemy at different times to suit. Historically, the Dutch provincial states had dominated the Baltic trade, then worldwide. I am hoping that you can draw parallels here. I'll mention subconscious bias here. I think British politicians feel a little bit embattled, a bit like the Dutch provincial estates of the past, the Netherlands, plural, that had such wealth that it could make land out of sea. Everyone wants a bit of Britain, they sort of think now. Everyone wants a bit of tax haven, the British Caribbean perhaps being the front line. But companies are going to Ireland now because it's a respectable way of paying less taxes rather than a subterfuge British way of paying less taxes. And being part of Europe is an attractive thing. If Google Maps takes you through World War I battlefield sites, these strange little enclaves have survived 2 world wars. If Gmaps directs you through an eco route through Germany to get to the Alps, apply a bit of common sense. The only eco route about it is that you go in high speed, so you're going much further using much more fuel. It's a political thing. I'm giving you some food for thought further back in time, delivering something quirky, because myself for one, I tire of driving through the World War I battlefield trenches route. It's depressing, and quite rightly so. What dominates your mind? We're on a route to the Alps from Britain to Chamonix, Tarentaise Valley, but we're taking a slightly scenic route through Doubs, L'Ain, and then skirting around the almost borderless Swiss Geneva. A more rural area, so quieter roads, but still very straight and scenic roads. Doubs, a river. L'Ain, a river. First two numbers, postcode, different areas of France. Neighbours, French Comte, Bourgogne, but historically the pirate area of the Bourgogne Central. In Burgundy, traditionally administrating the Wallonia area. The rural roads, there's a few parallel ones from Colmar, close to Germany, just above Switzerland, Black Forest, parallel to the northern southwest border of Switzerland, toward Geneva. We'll then be skirting, literally driving along the border, they don't notice it, on the southern border of Geneva, and then to Annecy, where we fork to either Chamonix Valley, much quieter, much more well-known, more tourists that are doing nothing to do with skiing, or to the Tarentaise Valley, much more intense, quality, on-piste. It may seem like I'm mixing it up and I'm confusing with complexity, or confused, but Ukraine's problem is already solved centuries ago in so many different ways, connotations. Politicians are saying things like the cost of living crisis is weeding out businesses that were able to hang on too long during the long period of low interest rates, completely forgetting the decade of stagnation after the global financial crisis. And they're saying businesses, but they're talking about households, weeding out households. Get on to your politician and solve what they are designing and extending beyond what's necessary. Stalemates, trench warfare. Also something becomes less permanent. Crimea reversed to pre-Victorian levels. Europeanising Russia as far as the Urals, which isn't a bad idea actually. Complications bring peace and contentment. And peace and prosperity brings administrative ease. Sure, America wants divide and rule in Europe. Enclaves and influence is the way your politicians can proceed, and your cost of living will return to some sanity, rather than a greed of land grab that will alienate subtle influence and cooperation, once wounds have been licked. It may seem like I'm mixing it up and I'm confusing with complexity, or confused, but Ukraine's problem is already solved centuries ago in so many different ways. Connotations. Politicians are saying things like the cost of living crisis is weeding out businesses that were able to hang on too long during the long period of low interest rates, completely forgetting the decade of stagnation after the global financial crisis. And they're saying businesses, but they're talking about households, weeding out households. Get on to your politician and solve what they are designing and extending beyond what's necessary. Stalemates, trench warfare. Also something becomes less permanent. Crimea reversed to pre-Victorian levels. Europeanising Russia as far as the Urals, which isn't a bad idea. Complications bring peace and contentment. And peace and prosperity brings administrative ease. Sure, America wants divide and rule in Europe. Enclaves and influence is the way your politicians can proceed, and your cost of living will return to some sanity, rather than a greed of land grab that will alienate subtle influence and cooperation, once wounds have been licked. Going where the weather suits my clothes. Or something like that. Weather, work, women. That's not one or the other, that's rainfall and climate. How do you choose your place in the sun? Make your home or summer house where you feel an affinity to how women are treated. The freedom of expression that there's scope for. teaching English as a foreign language, there's books about making accurate generalisations. You walk the line of stereotyping, like tropicalisations in the Caribbean. Now, Spain and Italy. There are similarities, but restrictions of perception differ. How a woman feels she can behave and dress, for different reasons. You have to remember that until European money flooded in, roads in Spain they isolated communities terribly, and so even now, individual villages can really have very different atmospheres. Spain didn't quite have that futurist, fascist era to quite the same extent that Italy did. The Civil War gave rise to the questions, but old traditions reinforced.
Pigs in the park. He says in the dark.
American what sells, overpowering other mindsets, is a little bit like how a woman can express themselves in Spain and Italy. But in traditional state religions, there's little accommodation of change, even through generations. Not miles off the Indian caste system. But I'm being mean, there certainly is accommodation of small incremental changes. But can you really be who you want to be? I'm not so sure. There's the first child is like this, second child is like that. By the time you've had half a dozen children, the later ones can take any role they want, really. And so there is great variety, accepted as a norm. Southern Italy, the kingdom of the two Sicilies, and northern Italy, quite a dramatic difference from Rome north. You do not see women out in bars. You do see women out in bars. The age of the women out in bars, are they independent? Are they worried about their reputation? Are they younger? Are they told to be worried about their reputation? This is true to a certain extent in France. I'm still calling it Vichy France. There's a language barrier traditionally halfway down the och and the oui or something. But apart from digressions, the topic today is why buy in France? Security comes up again here. After 2008 global financial crisis, France was one of the few countries in Europe that foreigners could get mortgages. I thought this told me something, really. Spain and Italy, mortgages no longer available to foreigners. And Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, there's not really much improvement in the weather from Britain. Netherlands, Belgium and Germany, and Scandinavia, are lesser changes to how women feel they have their social freedoms and how they can behave, what they can wear, where they can go, what they can aspire to work as, to have family or not to have family, as well as confidence, how much confidence you are allowed to express. For how many generations have traditional insecurities, imposed insecurities, been expunged, eradicated? Constant vigilance against the base just isn't required. Personally, I definitely have a proclivity towards the security of Northern European. British values are being exported to Eastern Europe, but it's a slow process eradicating centuries of blank. Please fill the word in French or English. The further south you go, well, I couldn't afford anywhere in Scandinavia, even if there was some miraculous quirk of global warming that its climate went Mediterranean. I just couldn't afford. It worries me when I see too much of the woman contenting herself with being the wife of. And I think that seems to be more prevalent the further south in Europe you go. And then you get to no choice. Throughout France, the woman always has choices, even when she's working after the fallout of the choice that she made of a husband that wanted to support that, encourage that. But hey, there's still Neanderthals in Scandinavia, which does raise the notable mention of have your summer house or your second home, speaking to myself here, where there's a decent social security system and a healthcare system. Though I would hate to say that that enables women's security, because it probably does. It used to be street lighting was enough, it's just not anymore. But apart from digressions, the topic today is why buy in France? Security comes up again here. After 2008 global financial crisis, France was one of the few countries in Europe that foreigners could get mortgages. I thought this told me something really. Spain and Italy, mortgages no longer available to foreigners. And Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, it's not really much improvement in the weather from Britain. Netherlands, Belgium and Germany and Scandinavia are lesser changes to how women feel they have their social freedoms and how they can behave, what they can wear, where they can go, what they can aspire to work as, to have family or not to have family, as well as confidence, how much confidence you are allowed to express. For how many generations have traditional insecurities, imposed insecurities being expunged, eradicated? Constant vigilance against the base just isn't required.
I ask myself the same questions. I tell myself the same lies. The silver on your skin tastes like the movie in my mind's eye. Ne changerait pas l'histoire quand t'es plus là.
Northern Europeans on holiday in the Mediterranean. It's only with generations of Northern European tourists that attitudes are changed, ghetto catcalling dies out. The volume of Northern Europeans around the Mediterranean, Southern Europe, doesn't create a community, but loosely generalisations can't be made so much. They recognise the norm. Feudal, contained Neanderthal minds change.
Même si ça fait mal, mon animal a sentiment brutal. Les nuits ne changeraient pas.
I'm making similar awful generalisations here, of course. And while I even feel uncomfortable saying it, I'll go further and say Morocco and Egypt are popular female sex tourist destinations or locations for a second home or living close to home. Europe. To maintain beyond novelty value, she has to maintain there the upper hand. That often means, and charities use the same, maintaining control of the money, which means choosing your partner very carefully. The female sex tourist must maintain the upper hand, or lose it into the tradition of the area. Changing partners involves too much of the community. There will be a too many times, sadly. I'll see if I can make this link reasonably clearly for you. In the early days of colonial America, France, or the French rather, were sort of like a very loose, weak pincer movement around the enclaves of the British settlements, and French much more frontiersmen and women, and often subjecting themselves to much more desperate situations. It was really very commonplace for Frenchmen, just for survival, to sell themselves into slavery, give themselves into slavery of the Native Americans. French frontiersmen giving themselves up to become slaves of Native Americans was really very commonplace, just for the avoidance of starvation and cannibalism. Canada as a country was sold, much the same as Brexit now for Britain. Greece is a bastion of civilization partly because of the 50% of the population employed in public sector and the financial independence that gives women and the responsibility. Melilla, strictly speaking Spain, but essentially North Africa, Morocco, spent time in Egypt, Cairo, and Essaouira, I suppose. Fully gives the semblance of equality, but it's not the woman's own, even then. Within the home, the woman can achieve the upper hand and maintain a position of privilege that partly pushes for maintaining the woman at home system of that Golden Crescent area.
Même si ça fait mal, sûrement de l'animal, sentiment brutal.
Go and wear the weather suits my clothes. Or something like that. Weather, work, women, that's not one or the other, that's rainfall and climate. How do you choose your place in the sun? Make your home or summer house where you feel an affinity to how women are treated. The freedom of expression that there's scope for. Personally, if you've got a 6, 9 or 12-hour journey through Europe to get to Canada, and you want to evade twice as much for your ferry that have doubled in price since Brexit, you have to book 24 hours in advance. So that gives you a good few hours to explore somewhere like Bruges or Ghent, just an hour down the road. Bruges and Amsterdam were the original stock exchanges, really, around 1500. And the individualism of the architectural expression, people wanting permanence, and individualism before speculative estate building, like the Georgians. This was early fairly ad hoc finance in Europe. The stock market meant there was money in Amsterdam and Bruges. These were early Netherlands provincial enclaves down now Belgium. Bruges is known for a beautiful weekend away. It's a very confident city, very young, vibrant, and there's a small square with 2 or 3 banging hardcore rave nightclub things in the corner where there's jailbait, age, gangs of girls go rushing in and out, and I'm trying to film the place. For the rest of my time there, it was difficult to avoid them. The young boys on their bikes arriving much later. The youth's freedom and safety makes it rare in the city. Freedom and safety. Unreliable statistics I might misread them, of course, and I think it was widely accepted that they were in Roman times. There were about 7 million within the Roman Empire and 1 million outside the Roman Empire. These are Jewish population statistics. This didn't fare well through the medieval times in its British position. By 1500, this was about 1 million global population. No end there by the Habsburgs. Holland encloses a huge percentage of these. Europe counts as the west of the Ural Mountains in Russia. Russia and Poland have significant populations as well. 1960 to 2020, Europe has lost almost 60% of its Jewish population in those 50 years, mainly as a result of the collapse of the Soviet Union, which, after many Jews left Eastern Europe as borders opened, only about 9% of the global Jewish population now lives in Europe, compared with nearly 90% in the late 1800s, but similar to the proportion 1,000 years ago. In total, an estimated 1.3 million Jews live in Europe in 2020, about 0.1% of the continent's population. 2/3 of them live in France, the UK and Germany. The London-based Institute for Jewish Policy Research is where some of these figures are coming from, which attempts to give a comprehensive picture of Jewish populations in European countries. Jews have not only been an integral part of European history and culture, but actually one of its oldest and original component groups, says the report entitled Jews in Europe at the Turn of the Millennium. However, throughout history, the inherent weakness of a boundless and powerless minority vis-à-vis territorially based societies and their constituted powers often put the Jewish people in a condition of dependency and instability, and translated into powerful ups and downs in the Jewish present. Between the end of the 18th and 19th century, 1700s and 1800s, the number of Jews in the world rose to more than 10 million and climbed further to 16.5 million on the eve of the Second World War. Most of the growth was in Eastern Europe, then America, and then Palestine and Israel. The murder of 6 million Jews in the Holocaust reduced the global population to around 11 million, radically disrupting what had been up to that moment the continuous build-up and transformation. 1880, 80% of the world's Jews lived in Europe. By 1945, this share had fallen to 35%, then to 26% in 1970 and 9% in 2020. Most of this decline happened in Eastern Europe, where the share of the global total fell from about 26% in 1945 to 2% in 2020. In the later decades of the 1900s, the opening of the doors of the Soviet Union meant that more than 1.8 million Jews left Eastern Europe between 1969 and 2020, resulting in a drastic shift in the Jewish population's centre of gravity from the east to the west of the continent. The study also reports that almost 70,000 Israeli-born Jews now live permanently in Europe, about 25% of these in the UK. The vast majority of European Jews, including 90% of British Jews, are not actively planning to emigrate to Israel or elsewhere. A minority of European Jewish families have more than 5 children, with the highest proportion, 24% in Belgium, which is a wealthy country which has a large ultra-Orthodox population. The lowest proportion, 5%, is in Poland, more left-wing politics amongst that part of the population. More than 3/4 of Polish Jews are married to non-Jews, but only 14% of Belgian Jews. Intermarriage has been a significant factor in the erosion of Jewish population size, as children in such families are often not brought up as Jewish. The UK Jewish population had the smallest proportion, just 4% of converts to Judaism, and Spain the largest, 25%. In every one of 12 EU countries, Jews were more pro-EU than the non-Jewish population. In Hungary, there was the biggest gap, with 51% of Jews saying they had a strong attachment to the EU, compared with 19% of the total population. There are also big gaps in Poland, Austria, Hungary. Having a Jewish affinity, no parents are Jewish, and then towards the other end of how Jewish are you, there's the ancestry that you need to be eligible for Israeli citizenship, where there is a higher female bloodline, ultra-Orthodoxy. This is particularly obvious when you look at the population of Jewish birth rate. Overall, it's broadly in line with the growth of all immigration to the United States. Depending on whether it is the religion or not, there's 7.6 million Jewish people in the United States. Or perhaps that's 2.4% of the population. So I think I've understood this correctly. In America, 51% of those could qualify for Israeli citizenship. Only 30% of Israeli Jewish people could, and 16% of European Jewish people could. In the 1930s in America, 20% of the Jewish population went to synagogues. In the 1960s, that had risen to 60%. The traditional spectrum of political views is easy to see in the United States, and 3 times the number of people living in a household in Europe before 1933. The 9.5 million Jewish people, that's 60% of the world population then, of 15.3 million worldwide, which is 9.5% in Poland and Russia. 2/3 in the east, that many moved west as the wall came down. New York and the eastern seaboard has by far the largest concentration in America. When you break it down to individual countries in Western Europe, UK about 0.65%, 0.3 million, a similar number for France. Netherlands, twice as much. The whole of Iberia still a fraction at 0.02%. Southern Mediterranean Europe, it's very similar to Belgium in its percentage and number. The 0.2% worldwide is 15 million to 18 million, perhaps up to 21 million, with neither parent being Jewish and not practicing the religion. Of the overall world population of 8 billion, that's mainly in China, India and Nigeria, all peoples. Of the 74% of Israelis that are Jewish, 500,000 of them live permanently in the United States. 500,000 of the 7 million that live on the North American continent. The world population needs 2.1 children per couple to maintain its level. There's a decreasing overall everyone world population decrease. China, India and Nigeria being the growth, not ageing populations. But Stacey Solomon is doing her bit. Is that 5 children now? Security comes up again here. After 2008 global financial crisis, France was one of the few countries in Europe that foreigners could get mortgages. I thought this told me something really.